Today, we're diving into something that's a huge deal for the Philippines, its fisheries. And let me tell you, when you look at the numbers, there's a fascinating story unfolding. It's about big changes, real-world economic impacts, and well, a whole new plan for the future. Let's get into it.
Hello, welcome to my channel, Agriculture and Fishery Arts. Please subscribe.
So, it all kicks off with this single number, -5%. That was the big headline for the Philippines' fisheries production this year, a 5% drop. Seems straightforward, right? But what does a number like that really mean? And, maybe more importantly, what is it not telling us? Well, you know how it is. A single number almost never tells the whole story. And this is a perfect example. Yeah, the overall drop is totally real. But if you look just beneath the surface, it's like there are these powerful currents pulling in completely opposite directions. So, this isn't just a simple story of decline. No, it's way more complex. It's a story about some really big changes. Okay, so to get what's actually going on, we have to crack open that 5% number and see what's inside. We need to look at the specific fish, the specific species. And when we do that, it's like a tale of two different worlds. You've got your definite winners, and you've got some pretty big losers. And wow, this is where things get really interesting. The difference is just huge. On one side, you've got everyday staples like galunggong, down almost 10%, seaweed, down over 10%, big-eyed scat down a whopping 20%. But then you look at the other side. Skipjack tuna is up over 31%, and white-leg shrimp also up more than 32%. So you see, that little -5% number, it's completely hiding this massive shift happening under the hood. The entire catch is being reshuffled. So you might be thinking, okay, some fish are up, some are down. Why is this such a big deal? Well, it's because this whole agro-fishery sector isn't just about what's for dinner. Nope, it's a massive, fundamental pillar of the entire Philippine economy.
And this really puts it all into perspective. I mean, just look at the scale we're talking about. This sector employs somewhere between 25 and 30% of the entire labor force. That's a huge number of people. And on top of that, it contributes about 10% to the country's GDP. So it's pretty clear, when this sector gets shaky, it doesn't just stay in one place. It sends ripples across the whole nation.
Okay, so let's dig a bit deeper into the industry itself. Where is all this production actually coming from? Well, check this out. Aquaculture, fish farming, makes up almost 55% of the entire output. That is huge. And its dominance is so important to understand. It means whatever happens in those fish ponds and seaweed farms, whether it's good or bad, is going to have a massive effect on the overall national numbers. Now, it's really tempting to look at this and think, okay, this is a Philippine story. But the truth is, we have to zoom out. Because what's happening in those local waters, it's actually a symptom of a much bigger global problem. A problem that, frankly, affects every single one of us. And listen to this. This is a direct quote from the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization. Land and water systems are at breaking point. I mean, that's about as direct as it gets. What they're telling us is that the very foundations of our food supply are being stressed to their absolute limit. That whole era of just assuming we could produce more and more and more, well, that's over. And now we're starting to see what comes next. So that brings us to the big question, right? How do you prepare for a breaking point? When one of the biggest organizations in the world tells you that the old playbook doesn't work anymore, what do? The answer isn't as simple as just trying to catch more fish. No, it's about something deeper. It's about completely rethinking how we train and prepare the people who are in charge of these precious resources. And that's where we get to the really exciting, forward-thinking part of this whole story. There's a new blueprint emerging, and it's not so much about bigger boats or fancier nets. It's about changing how we think. It's about designing an entirely new generation of farmers and fishers, people who have the skills to tackle this global crisis head-on. Because let's be real, to solve these kinds of problems, agrofishery can't just be a traditional craft anymore. It has to be a deeply complex, integrated science. You have to understand things like pathology to fight off diseases that can wipe out entire stocks. You need entomology to manage pests without destroying the ecosystem. And you need genetics to help develop species that can actually survive and thrive in a changing world. This whole scientific toolbox, it's absolutely essential if we're going to build a food system that's actually stable and sustainable for the long haul. And if you're going to teach this new kind of science, you need a new way of teaching, right? It's a philosophy called constructivist design. The core idea is super simple, but also super powerful. You learn by doing. So forget about just sitting in a lecture, listening to someone talk about fish diseases. Instead, imagine being in a lab or right there at the fish pond, figuring out a real problem and coming up with a solution on the spot. You're not just being fed information, you're building your own knowledge from the ground up.
So how does that actually work in practice? Well, it's often through a model called the 5 E's. First, you engage students with a real problem. Say, a fish population in a pond suddenly crashes. Then, you let them explore all the possible reasons why. Next, they have to explain what they've found. After that, they elaborate by brainstorming and designing solutions. And finally, they evaluate how well their solution actually worked. It's this active, hands-on cycle that's designed to create real problem solvers, the kind of innovators the industry desperately needs.
Which kind of leaves us with this one big final question. We've seen the troubling numbers, the decline. We've heard the really stark global warnings. But we've also seen this blueprint for how to respond, a plan built on science, on new ideas, and on a whole new way of learning. The data shows us the challenge, for sure, but the design, that shows us a possible way out. So the real question is, when our natural resources are pushed to the limit, can our own human ingenuity actually be enough to turn the tide?